when you expected it. It means being in faith, but then to draw back from faith because of something. So number one is either you were never in faith, and therefore when there was something did not happen the way you thought it should, you now give up on the process, or you were actually in faith, but then you drew back from in faith and focused on God and His Word, no matter what happens, including your supposed, the supposed failure to meet some sort of deadline, you would still not give up on faith, because you know that God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all you ask and imagine, including bring about the manifestation of the Word, in the time when it comes, in such a way that there's a total restoration, even if there was some sort of deadline. Now, that's to answer one part of the question. The other part of the question, when it has to do with people who give all sorts of deadlines, is that a lot of times you find people who are giving deadlines and expecting money to appear at so and so time, they treated faith like a spare tire. They were not in faith from the very beginning. Now they are under pressure. Now there's an emergency, and having exhausted all other options, they are now trying to rush the process of faith, and they're putting a deadline. But you see, like I said, they are treating faith as a spare tire, and that deadline they are putting, they are not exactly in faith. In fact, they are looking much more at the deadline and it's happening at the deadline much more than the Word of God and the certainty that God is able to do what He has said that He would do. So a lot of times you find people who are giving deadlines, plenty of them, they are doing emergency faith, and that plenty of times it doesn't work. Most of the time it doesn't work. All right. So you want to be someone who lives the life of faith every time, and your heart is fixed and fixated on the fact that God is your source and your sustainer, no matter what. So even when things, people think that being in faith is only when, they are trying to deal with a problem. They're trying to deal with a situation. No. Faith is how you are meant to live your life. Faith is living, how the believer is meant to live his life from the revelation of God and His Word. That's what it's meant to be. So that if trouble now comes from that same place of faith, you are able to deal with that situation and come out on top. But faith is not just how we come out of situations or deal with issues. It's how we are meant to live our lives.
Thank you very much, sir. This now takes me back to, where is your faith? Mm-hmm. Like Sunday's message.
Yes.
Like you're meant to, apply faith before the storm. This is actually a storm. You having to pay your bills, So it's like you were not really getting fat on the Word of God.
Exactly.
Like it has gotten to that point. So it's kind of like a bit difficult for you to be able to really get the Word that God is giving to you. Because at that point you're distracted.
You're under pressure.
Yes,
exactly.
You're under pressure.
Yes.
So the next question. Sarah, is there a specific time ordained for specific things in our life? And if we miss that time due to ignorance and rebellion, what happens then to us?
There is a time to everything and a season to every purpose there's a season for everything and a time for every purpose under the heavens. I don't know if I'm mixing that up. But it does appear, all right, that, God has ordained certain times for certain things to happen. And now, if you are ignorant, when you say ignorance, all right, you say that loosely because God is faithful to always bring to your awareness, all right, what you need to, do or how you need to respond in a particular season, all right? So really, ignorance will never be, God's fault. It's because we are refusing, we have rejected knowledge and rejecting, the illumination that God brings to us by His Word and by His Spirit. But anyways, for whatever reason, and you are missing some time and you're not aligning with God's purpose and plan, you're going to experience delay in your life. That's the fact. However, understand that God is able to restore. Now, a good example would be the story of Moses and children of Israel. If you read Genesis 15, verse 13, God actually prophesies to Abraham and tells him that the children of Israel are going to be, captives in Egypt for 400 years. He says that to him. He told Abraham that they are going to be, before they come into the land of Canaan, they are going to be captives in Egypt, to be oppressed in Egypt for 430 years. However, when we read Exodus 12, verse 40, we see